For this pattern, I'll be using an assortment of premium cut fabrics from my local Joanns. These are cotton quilting fabrics. I'll be using this mint as the background for the entire piece. This check mark will be the sparkler diamond portion, and the leaves will be the curved portion. I'll also be framing this super cute forest animal print in the center. You don't have to frame a fabric if you don't want to, but it's a great way to add a little bit of uniqueness to your piece. Okay, the next thing you're going to do is you're going to baste your pattern pieces. I do glue basting because I find it to be the easiest, but you can also thread baste. We're going to start with our curved pieces. So I have one of the pieces of my fabric that I cut out using my cardstock template, and I'm just going to put it wrong side facing up. I use the Fons and Porter glue pen. You can use whatever kind you want, but I recommend using a fabric specific glue pen. There's a couple of different ones. It just makes it easy to release from the fabric and you know it's not hurting it. For this big curved piece, because it's so big, I just put 3 small lines of glue on there and stick it right in the center. You want that 3/8 inch seam allowance to go around the outside of your template piece. Next, grab a pair of snips that you use for sewing, and you're going to snip around the curve about 4 or 5 times. I do this about every inch, and then you're going to turn it and you're going to do it on this big outside curve as well. If you don't do this, your fabric will not curve as well because it's going around a curve and the fabric is straight. It needs to be able to move. Now that I've snipped, you can see I'm going to take my glue pen and I'm just going to draw a line and push my fabric over. And this cut in the fabric, you can tell when you start the curve, makes it so that it lays flatter along that curved edge. Oh, my glue is drying too quickly on me. Alright, so we're all glued down. A bit of my glue dried too fast, so you can just go back and kind of touch up where you might need more. The bottom edge is now glue basted. You can also thread baste. I really like glue because it works quickly. There's no needles involved. I do have a puppy who likes to be interested in whatever I'm doing, in this way I feel like there's less danger involved for her. Next, move to your sides and just glue from one side to the other, but not on the fabric there. And fold your fabric over. And then you're going to glue this inside curve. And I'm only going to go a little bit at a time since my glue dried. And this is where you can really see that snipping your fabric really helps. And when you snip your fabric, you don't want your cut to go all the way to your template. You just want it to be close, because if you go too far, it'll tear onto the front of your piece and you don't want that. Go to the other edge, put your glue down, fold the edge over, and you are done with your curved piece. Next, I'm going to do one of my diamonds. Now, when you do your diamonds, if you do it correctly, you're going to end up with what's called dog ears, and that's the fabric that comes off the edges here. When I'm doing this, all I do is fold it back so it overlaps on the back one time, like that, and then I'll snip off the excess. If you're thread basting this together, it'll be a lot easier, but because I'm doing this by machine, I don't want these huge dog ears to work with. So fold it under, press it, just like that, and then I'm going to snip off this extra here. So I'm going to go do that, and the next thing we'll do is lay it out on our fabric. Alright, I removed the paper templates from the back of my fabric pieces, and the way that I did that is I used a hot iron and I pressed it, and then I took a snap awl that I have. You can also use like a chopstick or a skewer, and I slid it around the edges, and then I just turned it and I popped the paper piece out. You want to be careful on the curves because it can tear the perforation if you didn't already have it in 3 pieces. And then put it wrong side down on my ironing mat, and I press it with the hot iron again, and then I put it under a tailor's block, which is a piece of wood that's really strong. That just helps flatten it. With the diamond pieces, I took the fabric out, or the template out of the back, and then I took this dog ear that was originally open like this, and I folded it over so it was even with the wrong side here. So this is the wrong side, I just folded it, and that way I can clip off this excess here, and I'm not worried that my edge is all gonna fray because it's folded under already, so I can clip those edges off. So I'm gonna go do that and then I'll be back. All right, I've cut all of the dog ears off my diamonds so that they are ready to use. And now I'm taking my centerpiece fabric that I want to frame, and I'm taking my curved pieces and I'm just going to lay them out so that I can see where I want them to be, because I'm framing this forest design in the centerpiece here. So I'm going to move this around so that I can get the animals that I want to be framed in here. And I think that's going to be pretty good. That gives me my fox and my hedgehog framed in the center. Now I'm going to find a bowl that will fit over that hole, remove my curved pieces, and just trace a line with my fabric marker so I know how big of a piece of fabric to cut. Okay, I have fussy cut my centerpiece of my forest that I wanted to use, and I placed everything down, and I placed my curved pieces on top of it, and now I'm ready to go. All I'm using is Elmer's white glue, and I'm using this cool tip that I got from Purple Daisy's Quilting. That is a fine glue tip, so I'm just going to flip over one of these curved pieces, and I'm just going to go along the edge with my glue very, very lightly. That's why this glue tip is really great for this. I absolutely love it. And it doesn't hurt your fabric, and if you're making like a quilt, I made a quilt using this method, it washes right out. So I have the glue just along the edge, you can see, and I'm just gonna put this piece back where it was. Alright, I have laid out all of my diamonds on the corners, and you want to do a rough layout before you glue things down because it just gives you an idea whether everything lines up okay, because once you glue it down you don't want to be tearing it up. So now I'm just going to go around and I'm going to glue down my diamonds using the same method that I used on the curved pieces. Now that I have completely glued down all of the pieces, I'm going to cut a piece of backing that's the same size as my quilt block top, and I'm also going to cut a piece of backing fabric. And my backing fabric I usually cut an extra 2 inches all the way around because I do a fold over binding that I need to cut down to being 1 inch extra. This just gives me a little bit of space if anything shifts during the quilting. So I'm going to go do that. I'm going to pin the 3 pieces together like you would a normal quilt sandwich, and then we'll get to stitching. So I'm just starting from this side of the curve here, and I'm matching my seam allowance up to the left side of my foot, and I'm just going to stitch down using a 1/8 inch seam allowance. And I'm just going to back stitch a couple stitches at the beginning, and I'm just going slowly around that curve, trying to match it up to my presser foot as good as I can. And I'm just slowly feeding it. You can use quilting gloves if it helps you feed your quilt sandwich, which actually I might put mine on. I just have the Fons importer from Joanns, but they work really well. So I'm just continuing around that curve, and I'm just going to get to the edge. It straightens out. And I'm going to stop 1/8 of an inch from this edge. I'm going to lift my presser foot, turn it so that I can jump onto the next one. Lift my presser foot again, and now I'm going to follow this curve along the inside. Alright, so you can see these inside curved stitches are finished all the way around. Now I'm going to do the outside curves, and you are going to close off these ends. So I'm going to follow the curve, and then I'm going to lift my foot at this corner, bring it over, jump a couple stitches over. You can see it's just 1 or 2 stitches. Go along this edge and then along this curve all the way around and back to the beginning. Alright, now you're working on the outside curved stitches, and I've repositioned my foot to 5.5. You can also just line your presser foot up. You can line your piece up to the 1/8 inch seam allowance on your presser foot. This makes it so it's real easy for me to find. And I'm just stitching around the edge. When I get to this corner, I'm going to lift my presser foot and come across. Now when I reach where I've already stitched to come across the 2 curves, I'm going to try and match my stitching line up with the one that's already there so I don't have 2 stitch lines there. Both sets of our curves are now finished, both the inside and the outside, and now we're going to move to our diamonds. I really like to just go around each one all the way and then jump to the next one down here at the point. It kind of hides your stitching a little bit and is easier than trying to catch things in a zigzag stitch. This is what one set of finished diamonds looks like, and you can kind of see down here. I jumped from one diamond to the next at the points so that I didn't have to break my thread every time. You also want to keep that 1/8 inch seam allowance and get as close to those points as you can so that they don't catch and pull up too far. You can see I do have a little bit, but not too much, and this is a wall hanging, not a quilt, so it won't be washed very often. Once you get back to the beginning point, just break your threads and you're finished. Do this 4 more times on all the other corners and you're almost done. Now that all the stitching is done, I'm going to trim my batting to size, make a fold over binding, and get this finished.